Now we get to our final move on the big triangle, and that is changing non-common fractions to percents. We already talked about changing common fractions to percents, and that's no big deal because those you have memorized. So you would have memorized that 1/2 is equal to 50%, and 1/4 is equal to 25%, and 1/10 is equal to 10%. So that's no work because you have the percent equivalents already memorized in your head. But what happens if you want to change a fraction that is not a common fraction, and I call those non-common fractions, such as these, 1/8 or 1/6 or 1/4 or 4/9, and you want to change those to a percent? Well, we don't have those memorized. So the way you're going to do this is, instead of going directly from fraction to percent, you're going to go the long way around the triangle, first changing the fraction to a decimal number, and that you know how to do that. We just have to divide to get the decimal number, right? And then once we have the decimal number, then we're home free because it's an easy move to change from a decimal to a percent. That's just moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. So that once we do that, we get our fraction changed to a percent. Okay, so I'm going to work some of these with you. Starting with 1/8. So notice on my worksheet here is that we're going to start with a fraction. We're going to change the fraction to a decimal number using division. Then we're going to change the decimal number to a percent. And we do that by moving the decimal point over 2 places. All right, so changing 1/8 to a decimal number. First, the top number goes inside the box. I place my decimal point. Now, watch this and listen very carefully. I'm making an important point here, and that is, if your goal is to change this fraction, if your ultimate goal is to change it into a percent, then when you're setting up the division, place your decimal point and add 2 zeros and then stop. I'm going to draw a little wall here. We're not going to do any division past the hundredths place. If we have a remainder, then we're going to express the remainder as a fraction of the outside number. So we'll do that in just a moment. Okay, decimal point goes straight up in the answer. 8 divides into 10 one time. 1 times 8 is 8. 9, 10. We have a remainder of 2. 8 divides into 20 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. We have a remainder of 4. So I'm going to place my 4 in the numerator of a fraction. My outside number is the denominator of the fraction. And notice that this fraction reduces to 1/2. Now, our answer looks kind of strange for the moment. Our decimal number is 0.12 and 1/2, and it's kind of strange to have a fraction at the end of a decimal number. But this will look really nice in just a moment, because now we're ready to move our decimal point 2 places over to the right. So here we go, 1, 2, and that's so that we can add the percent sign. Now, if the decimal point ends up at the end of the 2, all the way over to the right, then this number is just the whole number 12. And then we can't throw out that 1/2. I've got to put that in. And then we place our percent sign. We place our percent sign after we move the decimal point 2 places. Okay, so here is our answer. 1/8 is equivalent to 12 and 1/2%. Right, let's go to the next example. The top number goes inside the box. I place my decimal point and add exactly 2 zeros, anticipating that we're going to be moving the decimal point over 2 places in order to change the decimal answer that we get to a percent. All right, here comes the division. 6 divides into 10 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. 7, 8, 9, 10. I get a remainder of 4. 6 divides into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. And I get a remainder of 4. So I'm going to express the remainder as the numerator of a fraction. My outside number is the denominator of the fraction. This fraction is reducible, so I'm going to reduce it to 2/3. Now I have my funny looking decimal number with a fraction at the end, but that's okay, because in just a moment we're going to move the decimal points and everything will look nice in just a minute. If I move my decimal point 2 places to the right so that I can add a percent sign, the 0.16 turns into the whole number 16 plus the 2/3 and then my percent sign. 1/6 is equivalent to 16 2/3%. Okay, moving on to 4/9. The top number goes inside the box. I place my decimal point and add 2 zeros. Now I'm going to stop dividing after the second 0. And if I have a remainder, I'm going to write a fraction. Decimal point in the answer. 9 divides into 40 4 times. 4 times 9 is 36. 36. 37, 38, 39, 40. This looks like a repeating decimal. Now 9 divided into 40 again, still goes 4 times. 4 times 9 is 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. So we get a remainder of 4 again. I write the remainder as the top of a fraction. The outside number is the bottom of the fraction. Next, I move the decimal point 2 places over to the right, which turns 0.44 into the whole number 44. And then I include that fraction that I ended up with at the end of that division problem, tack on my percent sign. So 4/9 is equivalent to the decimal number 44 4/9%. So far we've gotten what we call mixed number percents, a whole number and a half. I mean a whole number and a fraction. A mixed number is a whole number and a fraction. So mixed number percents. Now we get to 1/3. I'm going to work out 1/3. Now 1/3 is one of your common fractions. So you should have memorized that 1/3 is equal to 33 1/3%. But I just want to go ahead and work it out with you so that you see how this division and then movement of the decimal works so that we end up with 33 1/3%. Okay, so here we go. The top number always goes inside the box. I place my decimal point, add 2 zeros, put my decimal point in my answer. 3 divides into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9, so we have a remainder of 1. 3 divides into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9, so we have a remainder of 1. I put that in the top of a fraction, and I put the outside number in the bottom of the fraction. So now you see how we get 33 1/3. Moving that decimal point over 2 places turns 0.33 into the whole number 33 we tack on the fraction and our percent sign. Okay, so that's how you change non-common fractions to a percent number or to percent numbers. I also wanted to take a look at a few more fractions down here, starting with 2/10. Now, 2/10 is not on your list of simple fractions, is it? But 1/10 is. So if you know that 1/10 is equal to 10%, then 2/10 would be equal to twice that amount, or 20%. If you know that 1/10 is equal to 10%, then 3/10 is equal to 3 times that amount. 3 times 10 is 30. So 4/10 would be equal to 40%. So by knowing some of the simple percents, you can easily come up with percents of fractions that are related to the simple percents. Let's do the same thing with some fifths. Now we know that 1/5 is equal to 20%. So 2/5 is going to be 2 times 20, which is 40. If 1/5 is equal to 20%, then 3/5 is going to be equal to 3 times 20, which is 60. And 4/5 is going to be equal to 4 times 20, which is 80. Okay. So I'm going to have you now work a problem set on, hold on just a minute, I had to grab my percent booklet. You're now going to work a problem set. You keep working backwards in this percent booklet. So you're going to go to page 6 in the percent booklet. And notice that the title of this page is Changing a Fraction to a Percent. Notice that I have scribbled out the instructional material and the example. I do not like the way that this move from changing a fraction to a percent is explained in the percent booklet. So don't pay attention to it. Don't even read it. It's not helpful, and I think that the method that I'm showing you how to use works much better and is more easily understood and remembered. So up in the corner of my page, I have a little sketch of the big triangle with kind of a reminder that you're going to change your fraction to a decimal number first, then change your decimal number to a percent. Okay, so here are all of the problems. On row 1, you'll notice that some of your simple fractions show up, so you would not even have to do to figure out the percent the long way. You should just automatically know what 1/5 is equal to. You should know what 3/4 is equal to. You should know what 1/3 is equal to. You should be able to figure out 3/10. Now finally, we get to a non-simple fraction. So work this one out. Go ahead and work this one out, even though we did it in the example. And if you want to, you can go ahead and work these simple fractions out the long way too, just to practice the technique. Then go ahead and finish the rest of the page. These problems will give you a practice, sometimes changing a fraction to a percent the long way, and sometimes you can go the short way just by having memorized the simple percents.